Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel here at Prijs Nuis. Today we are going to talk about something that some people might not even be aware about, the costs of investing. And I'm not talking about losing money on your investments, that's a whole different thing. We are going to talk about some taxes, mutual funds and their load fees. We're going to talk about brokerage fees. Stay tuned. So, what are the different costs associated with investing, and to some extent, how can you protect yourself from them? Well, obviously the big one, the major one is taxes. As far as I know, most places around the world, no matter where you invest, they will charge you some type of tax. As most governments do, they try to bring money in from whatever source they can. And so the taxes is one of the ways they do it. Depending on what type of account you have, it might be different where you are and the type of investment vehicle that you choose as well. For example, I've heard that in America you have something called a 401k or Roth IRA, I believe it's called. And those are investments that you make pre-tax, meaning that this is money taken from your salary, but it's taken before taxes. You put the money into your investment, it's tax-free, but it does mean you will pay taxes once you start to take the money out, as far as I've understood it. I might be wrong, so don't quote me on this. Look it up for yourself. There are, again, different types of accounts and different types of investment vehicles might require you to pay different amounts of taxes. Here in Sweden, we have two types of quite, or indeed very common accounts that you can use for your investments. One is the ISK, or investment savings account, or the other one is a KF, or a kapitalförsäkring, a capital insurance. And those work a bit differently. You put money into those accounts from your net income, so after taxes, meaning that the government, they take out some taxes from your investments, but not as much as they would if it was pre-tax money that you put in. And there is a minimum floor, because now in this interest environment that we have all around the world, the taxes in some places are even negative. They've set the lowest possible amount to 1.25%, okay? But that is only the amount of your investments that you have to pay taxes on. That is not the tax percentage of your investment in itself. So check it out. If you have, let's say, $100,000, okay, worth of investments, 1.25% would be $1,250. Of those $1,250, you then pay a 30% tax. And it's a ongoing tax, it's continuous, it's running yearly. In fact, I think the bank have to report your investments to the tax office every quarter, I believe. So it comes pre-printed on your taxes. Recently we've had a tax season here in Sweden. We just finished doing our taxes. And it comes pre-printed and you just sign it and, you know, it's all taken care of. And I think the 30% off of 1.25% of your whole investment, actually it's, you know, it's a decent deal. Different types of accounts might be, we have also something called aktie- och fonddepot, where it's basically just an account for stocks and funds, basically. Well, actually you can put anything into it that you want to. And that is taxed differently. There is no running tax. There is not the 1.25 of which they take 30%, no. Instead, what you do is you put the money in, again, net income, so after taxes, but you pay 30% taxes on whatever profits you make. But it does work a bit different, because you can also balance your taxes. If you own two stocks, one is up 50%, the other one is down 50%. If you were to sell both of them and you want to bring some money out, well, you would be plus minus zero, provided you have the equal weighting of the two stocks. You can then balance your taxes. You can say, hey, I'm not going to pay 30% tax on the stock that increased by 50%. No, because the other stock lost 50%. So actually I'm a net zero. So then you don't have to pay taxes. So it's quite interesting, but that type of account does require some more manual work. You yourself have to report to the tax office, the IRS equivalent here in Sweden, Skatteverket, every year and declare your capital gains and appreciation. Other costs when it comes to investing, you have mutual funds, for example. They typically have a fee. Actually, it's not paid once per year. Again, it's a recurrent, continuous payment. And I think most funds, they actually charge you the 1/365th of the year's fee every day. Even if you own a fund for only 2 days, you have paid 2 days worth of the yearly fee. Presenting it as a yearly fee makes it easier. It would be too complicated to have the daily fee as 0.00 whatever percentage. Different funds cost different amount. Index funds are cheap because they are basically just run by computers. There is no need for them to make active choices. They don't, well, obviously they have fund managers. A passive fund doesn't require the staff that an active mutual fund does. The fee is actually just taken from the value of your particular holding. So it's not something, again, that you have to pay in at the end of the year. Whatever the result you see in your brokerage account is whatever the increase or decrease of that fund, and included the fee. If a fund is up, let's say 10% 1 year, and the yearly fee is 2%, if you haven't made any other contributions or taken money out, you should see an increase of 8% in your brokerage account. But it might show up differently depending. You might see an 8% increase of your monetary value. But in terms of the percentage, you know, to the side of the little fund name and the ticker symbol and everything, there it might say 10% because that is what the fund has performed. But the actual cash amount, usually furthest to the right or at the bottom, depending on, you know, your brokerage account, it might say, oh, I made $8,000 on $100,000, so 8% minus the fee. Stocks are a bit different. You typically pay a brokerage fee for each transaction. Buying and selling stocks require you to pay a brokerage fee. And the fee could be, in some bank, it might be very expensive. In some very focused brokerage account online, it might be very cheap. So if you are into buying individual stocks and diversifying your portfolio and making monthly contributions, or maybe you have a lump sum, you have to consider the costs with the brokerage fee. Here in Sweden, we have at least 2 brokerage firms that are basically online banks with their main focus on investing and for private citizens. Actually, they have managed to keep their costs quite low because they don't have a physical office, there isn't much in the way of staff, it's all done automatically online. Typically much cheaper than the normal big bank. But recently, one of the banks actually lowered their commission or their brokerage fee for stocks and has actually become one of the cheaper ones. And also something to consider when it comes to brokerage fees and individual stocks, either a percentage or a minimum amount. So let's say the minimum amount is $1 or 1%. If you invest, let's say $10 and the brokerage fee is $1, that equals 10% of your investments. You paid $1 to invest 10, typically, so you know you would have $9 worth of stock. So that is a 10%, but you know in the fee it says 1% or $1. So how much should you invest? Well, you should invest $100 because then you still pay the $1, but you get the minimum down to the 1%. So that is something to take into account. There are typically brokerage firms that I know of. You can choose which kind of level you want, based on how often you trade and the volume you trade in. Typically speaking, the more money you put in, the cheaper the fee, because again, as a percentage, the bank makes more money. But be aware of the minimum fee. All right, guys, that's it for today's episode. Subscribe to the channel and make it grow and make it happen. And also, I'm interested to know, what are your costs? How do you invest? Are you, for example, a real estate investor? Do you pay a mortgage? Do you have a property but you haven't managed to rent it out yet? Let us know in the comments below. See you guys around.